It's time for Physician Family Finances, the show where physician moms and dads like you can get the answers and encouragement you need to turn a good earned income into great life outcomes for tomorrow and today.
Hello, physician moms and dads. I'm Nate Reineke, certified financial planner and primary advisor.
And I'm Kyle Hoelzle, retirement and investment specialist and a certified financial planner as well.
Kyle, what's going on?
Not a lot, man. Just doing the thing, I did a little estate planning, some personal estate planning this morning.
You know, my wife's a therapist, and they always talk about, they talk in the office about how sometimes they go through so much, trauma with all their clients and everything that they kind of need their own therapy. And I think about that in our lives. I'm like, man, we got to take care of ourselves too. Like, I think I read somewhere that like 60%, I'm making up numbers, some high percentage of financial planners don't have their own plan. So it's good. We eat our own cooking over here. So tell me, what have you learned? Everybody, this big estate planning thing, everyone knows they need to do it, but they don't really know what happens. So what have you done so far?
Well, basically I did the first intake visit where we met and went over kind of the main points of an estate plan. I learned there's kind of 5 main points of an estate plan that you have to drill into and identify different parts about. And one thing I learned was you want to ask for materials up front if they have it, and you want to review that stuff beforehand just to make the most out of that first meeting, because there are some big decisions that they're going to ask you right off the bat. Like who's going to take care of your money after you pass away? Who's going to take care of your children after you pass away? I mean, these are big questions, and there's all those health directives. And there's a lot of layers to those and different things that you can have and not have. And so, yeah, I would say, one thing I learned was, think about this stuff ahead of time, which I had been doing, but actually seeing it in front of you, like ask the attorney for like, how can I come prepared? What are a list of things I need to have ready to go?
Yeah.
If that's not provided to you, I would ask for that.
That's actually really good, because I've noticed that when people go fill out this paperwork, it's just homework or a chore, and they're kind of just filling it in. And the people who get the most out of estate planning kind of take their time, but it's also because it feels like a chore. They don't want it to take too long. So if you think about it beforehand, then when the boring paperwork comes along, you'll be prepared. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too is this works for busy people with all sorts of things, but schedule a hard stop time for you to have this stuff done. Like, hey, let's get our second estate planning meeting on the calendar now, so that all the stuff I have to do in between, I know I have to have it done by this date. Give yourself a deadline with this stuff, because it's not fun to think about. You don't want to think about it. It's that's common. That's normal. I mean, I have no problem talking and thinking about this stuff because I do it on a regular basis. But when you start to do it for yourself, it's a whole other story. And so I get that. And so, yeah, I think setting yourself a deadline, maybe in the form of a second meeting or whatever that is, looks like a calendar item. I think that's another thing that I'm starting to realize as I go through this process is vital for busy people, especially with families.
Definitely. Yeah. I remember when I bought, my first life insurance policy years and years ago, I was really comfortable with it. But when I went and told my spouse kind of this is the plan, it was not comfortable for her. She's like, what? I don't even want to talk about that. I'm like, well, you have to, so yeah. All right. Well, we have some questions from the audience and from clients, and we're going to get into them. Kyle is all about investing, so we tried to keep it to investment questions today. So Kyle, the first question I'm going to ask you is from a vascular surgeon in Oregon. My son is in college and wants to start investing. What tools should he consider?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think it's awesome that there are young people out there, first of all, who, are working and want to start saving and investing or curious about this. I think that's really great. So, right away when you're low income, like a college student would presumably be, work study or something, Roth IRA, right away is, just that's the go-to,
Yeah.
Not looking to get a tax deduction because you're not in a high bracket. But you're young and you get that tax-free growth and you get that in at the age of 20 or mid 20s. That's awesome. That's a big win. So definitely, I definitely recommend a Roth IRA. And in terms of tools, I mean, I think in terms of investment tools, I think, keep it simple, you can get a target date fund that's 2070. That's, and they come out with new older years come out. So if that's not quite far enough in the distance, you can, reinvest it, especially in a Roth, no taxes, owed when you rebalance it. So you just can trade into the further out one, if that makes sense down the road. But, all these target date funds, once you're so far out, most of them are always, they're like,
That's
if you look at like within one series, one provider's series, there's only one highest risk level, no matter how far out you are. So 2070, 2050 are usually the same allocation. So that's a great vehicle to invest in when you don't maybe have a lot of experience, but you want something that's going to serve you in the long run. I think that's a great tool.
Yeah. I think it would be really cool if you as a parent and you're trying to teach them how to invest. It's not, we see this every day. It doesn't, on the surface, it doesn't look all that exciting to buy some big fund. But what you can do is have them actually go inside the fund, show them what positions are in the fund and say, like, you own these things. I do this for myself. Garden variety index funds we buy over here. But remember, you go in there and you have all the stocks that you're reading into and thinking about, you probably own them. So go in there and find them, show them what they actually own so they can keep their interest alive, kind of keep that spark. But one big thing that you did say it, but it's really important, is to fund that IRA, they need income. If you want to be helpful, then you could maybe replace their income for them so that they can go, invest their few $100s that they make, but they got to have income to put money in the Roth. And then another cool thing about this is, we talk Roth all the time. We love Roths. But if you had to put your first dollar as a doctor into some vehicle, it wouldn't be a Roth. You do want the tax break. But that's just not the case for young people. And that's not the case for the average person in this country. Most people have really low tax brackets, and which is why you hear about it all the time. When you hear about Roths, it seems like the holy grail. You would never do anything but Roth. It's just different for physicians and high incomes, but it's not different for your college student. They should be putting their money in a Roth first. So yeah, it's a great way to stick the money in there, get the money in. And last little piece on this is, if for some reason your college student needed the money, you can get that basis out without paying any penalties in that Roth. So it kind of acts like a mini emergency fund, even though mom and dad are kind of the emergency fund at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, next question. General surgeon in Oregon. With my 529 plan, if my child is over 18, can they be the successor and the beneficiary? So with 529s, there's a single owner. You can't have like a jointly owned 529. So best practice is, mom owns the 529, dad is the successor. So if something happens to mom, it goes to dad, and then your child is the beneficiary, right? But if for some reason you can't make it that way, I believe in this case, one of the parents has passed away. And so who do you make the successor? Well, they're 18 years old and it's kind of their money in your eyes. So the question is, can you make them both? And the answer is yes, you can make them both. So you can be in control of what happens with the 529 while you are alive. And if something were to happen to you, then your child would then own the account. The thing to know, back to estate planning, when you think about the ownership of these accounts, you have to know kind of the repercussions of, I'm planning this out. If this happens, meaning you do die, what are the repercussions of my child owning the account? And it simply is they would own it. I mean, they would be in control of it so they could make some not so great decisions, like cashing it out for something other than school. But if you're comfortable with that, and they're old enough to own a 529, I think in some states it might be 21. But if they're old enough to actually own a 529 and you're okay with that, then yes, the answer is yes.
So what I'm hearing you say, though, which I think is always interesting, is that you can be the owner of a 529 and the beneficiary of that 529 for the money to be used for your education. And yes. Also, too, I want to back up, too, because I always explain this to clients all the time. Like, we hear the word beneficiary and we think when I die, that person gets the account. And that's true in every single financial account that I've ever seen, except for 529.
Yeah.
The beneficiary is the kid the person who receives the funds for their education. That's the beneficiary. And the successor acts like how we would think a typical beneficiary would work, and that they retain ownership of the account if I pass away. Sorry, back to my initial thing. 529s, like right now today, if I want to go get my master's and my PhD or something, I could open a 529 in my name and be the owner, and then I could fund it, and then I could use it to pay for my education, right?
That's right.
Yeah. That's right. So when you name, so then what this client's asking is that if you name your child a successor, then they become the owner. And it's just basically back to that same scenario where like you're the owner and that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with what you're saying in that context of like, you know, if your child's maybe through their undergrad, they're showing financial, you know, they got a job, they're showing financial savviness, you know, I mean, you could easily name them the successor, I think, if you felt comfortable doing that. Definitely, consider the ramifications, like you said, because that money would be theirs at that point, and they could do anything they wanted with it at that point. So that's a great question.
That is funny. I never thought about how it's a beneficiary is different in everything other than 529s. That's very true.
Yeah, it's nuanced. You have to be careful.
Okay, a psychiatrist in Virginia asked, when target date investing, should we be investing with a target? Oh, I'm sorry. Should the investment target be based on your current age or your planned retirement year? I don't think I've actually had anyone ever ask this question, because normally the title of it is like retire in 2050, right? So it's kind of obvious to us, but you had an interesting way of putting it. So I'll let you answer.
Yeah, I agree. I have not heard this question before. Caused me when I first heard it. It was during a meeting with a client, and they asked me. They said they read it on the internet in an article, and they asked me about it. Mm-hmm. And I said, should you buy your target date fund to target your current age or your retirement target year? But and my initial thoughts, like, well, all these, like you said, all these funds are the target year that's stated in the name of the fund.
Yeah.
Not your target age, it's your target year when you retire, right? So immediately you kind of dismiss that. But then you start to think about, well, maybe there's something to this, right? Like I can't just dismiss it right away. So sometimes when it's really hard to make sense of something, I find it's good to go to the extremes. So in this case, I was with the client on the line there. I said, all right, let's think about this in extremes. Let's say you want to retire when you're 40. Like that's pretty early. Like that's pretty extreme. Not a lot of people are able to do that. So let's just assume that you have normal health and you're going to live to, 85, 90, so you have 50 years that you need to spend your assets down. So the question then becomes, if I'm retired today at 40, then I should be in the target date 2025 fund. And that's probably going to be about 50% stocks, 50% bonds, or 60-40, something like that. That money has to last me for 50 years. Conversely, I could target my age 60 and I could buy a target date fund that matches my age 60. And this is what I think at the core of the question here. Should I do that instead? And my answer it seems to me it's a risk reward type question. It's, if you need to retire today, then you should have enough money where you don't need to take substantial amounts of risk over the next 50 years to make sure you run out of money. Because if any of those bad outcomes happen, then you run the chance of superannuating, which is to say running out of money before you die. Mm-hmm. So I believe that you should be if you're actually retiring at the age 40 and it's 2025, you should be really conservative, meaning you should have enough money to not have to take risks to last that next 50 years. If you got to take more risks to do that, then you probably should keep saving.
You're really not prepared.
You're not prepared, right? Because it's not recommended to go into retirement carrying too much risk, unnecessarily. And in this case, I think that it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I wasn't on this call, but I imagine that what's coming from this article is that most people retire around the same age. The average person retires at 65. And so to them, they can't fathom a world where some doctor decides they want to retire at 50. They just think, well, the average person retires at 65. So it's sort of the same to them, meaning a fund that, you're retired when you're 65, let's call it 2055. If you're retiring in 2055, whether or not you're 40 or you're saying you're retiring in 2055, it doesn't really matter. Like it's all the same to them. But this is yet another example of why physicians can't take rules of thumbs. They can't read articles and immediately apply it to their situation all the time. Everyone is unique, but physicians are extra special, right? Because they all have specific goals. They have really taxing jobs. Many of them can't work until they're 65. It's some can work until they're 70 pretty comfortably. Most psychiatrists I talk to want to retire at 70. They love their job. They get better with age. It's just different for you. And so anytime you're reading an article, you might be able to get some value out of it, but you have to be able to translate it into your own life. And for physicians, I would, if that's what this article was getting at, you just have to know, I don't know many physicians unless they're either working until the wheels fall off or they're like, I want to retire, in my late 50s or 60 or something. So you just can't take rules of thumbs. You're different than everybody. You have a different risk tolerance. You have different spending habits than even your peers. Yeah. So, but generally speaking, it's planned for the year you want to retire, right? And if that is retiring early, you should have a whole bunch of money, probably in a flexible brokerage account. And you should also be investing appropriately. So like you said, not taking too much risk. But interesting question. Let's see, we'll get to the next one here. This is a Pulm Crit Care doctor in California. My wife works for a tech company and receives around $20,000 a year in RSUs. How would you handle them in my portfolio? So this is a question that I got. I wrote this plan. RSUs aren't all that familiar to doctors, but more and more lately I'm finding, especially in California, I have 2 doctors married to tech people in California. So they get these RSUs, which is essentially a form of a concentrated single stock, but it's in the form of compensation, right? And so you work for Google and they give you Google stock and it's part of your comp package. And everybody gets these single stocks. Honestly, most of the time what I see them do, I see them hold them. They just sit there. And so they come in the form of income, but then if you just hold them, they act like a normal stock where there's capital gains as they grow. The problem with this is, and it's a problem, it's our problem, Kyle. It may not be the average person's problem, but it's our problem. It goes against a physician family investment philosophy of diversification. So I would never ask you to buy a single stock. So if you earn a single stock, or sometimes people are gifted a single stock, what do we recommend they do with them? We recommend you sell them and invest them appropriately for your retirement or college plan. So be fully diversified by these garden variety index funds to participate in the whole market rather than this one concentrated position. And I see these get out of hand too. $20,000 one year doesn't seem like a big deal. You almost feel like you're taking a high flyer on the company you work at. But over time, I've seen these grow, because tech stocks can grow pretty fast. And with $20,000 a year over and over and over for many years, it's all of a sudden you have a big concentrated position, you have a big tax problem. So I would use this, essentially, I would think of these as income that are sold right when you get them. It's not, I'm not making I'm not taking a guess on whether or not Google or Meta or Apple are going to do well or not. I'm just saying I would never ask you to buy one individually, so there's no sense in holding on to one individually. The only real thing to consider here is there are some tax logistics, like if you have a bunch of RSUs and I'm asking you to sell them, or you're asking them to sell them, and you're like, I'm going to get hit with a bunch of taxes. Sometimes I've seen, well, if you wait a month, you won't be paying short-term capital gains anymore. It'll be long-term. Sometimes that kind of analysis is worth it to wait it out to save a little bit on taxes. But if you're starting from scratch, I wouldn't even mess with holding on to them for longer than the second you get them, you sell them and you invest them, or sometimes you could spend it.
Yeah, that was what I was wondering. It's like, if you can sell them immediately, even though you're in that short-term capital gains window where it's like, oh, don't do that because you're going to pay ordinary income tax. But if you have like 1 or 2 days of short-term capital gains, it's probably going to be pretty insignificant, I would imagine, unless there's some huge spike. But
That's right.
That's atypical. So yeah, I would expect you to, who cares you're paying ordinary income tax on this small amount of gain to reduce, and it's, you're thinking, you're a planner, so you're thinking big picture here. You're thinking, well, say you stay at this company for 20 years and you're getting these sizable single stock, and some of it grows. There is a real concern to be had about what's called, concentration in your portfolio, where a certain large percentage of your retirement assets are concentrated in a single stock. And that's really common with like CEOs and things like that, where they get a lot of their compensation that way and other things like that. But yeah, I mean, that's a real concern that you do have to consider. Like you said, taking immediate action on it is better than delaying the inevitable on that. So yeah.
And you'll still participate in the growth of the market.
Mm-hmm.
You'd probably buy right back into Google, because you're going to put it in, an index fund, and Google's in there. You just won't be so concentrated.
Yeah. I could see, like, from a value standpoint, if you wanted to participate in the growth of your company, you wanted to see the fruits of your labor, and that was important to you. I could see keeping the first one or two of those when you first start to see your all time since you've been there. That'd be cool. But like each year moving forward, I would, like you said, I would get that and reinvest that for my future and appropriately. So
yeah, that would be cool. It's like the first dollar you make when you open up your first business and you hang it on the wall.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's going down in value. Okay, last question for you, Kyle, from a dermatologist in Texas. Why do you recommend municipal bonds in my brokerage account over corporate bonds? So I want to take the easy one, which is taxes. But I was talking about this with you the other day, and you had a lot more reasons other than just the tax benefits of municipal bonds. So I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you said, it's federally tax exempt on those municipal bond funds, and that's your biggest tax burden on the income generated from that bond fund. So immediately, putting municipals in a taxable brokerage makes a lot of sense over corporate bonds, just from an after-tax return standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find interesting is, looking at the trailing returns of total, like a total U.S. bond index, which is going to have like treasuries and corporate bonds in it, versus a total U.S. municipal bond index fund. You look at the trailing returns, and looking like the last 10 years, for example, municipal bond funds have actually outperformed corporate bond funds just in that period. I'm not saying that's going to be, there's no way to predict the future, but at least looking at the trailing 10-year, it has outperformed, and that's on a before tax basis.
Wow.
So it's bonds. We're talking, 30, 40 basis points, maybe something small, but it's a performance advantage nonetheless. And then you take the after-tax return into account, and then municipal bonds, the return's even higher for you because you're not paying taxes on that.
Right.
On that interest.
Yeah.
That's which is to say that it's an asset class worth having. It's not something to be discarded.
Right. That's right. And an asset class worth having. You pointed this out to me when we were talking that I thought was most interesting. I mean, you go look in your 401k and it's filled with corporate bonds. There isn't a bunch of municipal bonds. So really, unless you have a taxable account, most of the time, that's your only exposure to municipal bonds. So there's it's this whole sort of asset class. It's bonds, but like a sub asset class of bonds, and you really don't have any exposure to it unless you buy it in your taxable account. So all signs point to municipal bonds, and the tax benefit is what we always talk about. I mean, because for doctors, it just doesn't make any sense to buy any other bonds in your taxable account. But to hear that there's 3 or 4 other really great reasons to do it, I started getting excited about bonds over here.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want a little bit more diversification?
That's right. Yeah.
So,
okay. That is it for today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you liked this episode, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss when we release new episodes every week. You can leave us a rating wherever you're listening. If you'd like to work with us, you can go to physicianfamily.com, schedule an interview. If you're not ready for that, though, we welcome and encourage questions. You can send us a question at podcast@physicianfamily.com. We promise to answer the question, whether or not it shows up on the podcast or not. So someone on the team will be getting back to you. And remember, until next time, you're not just making a living, you're making a life.
Are you ready to turn worries about taxes and investing into all the money you need for college and retirement? It's time to make a plan and get on track. To find out if we're a match, visit physicianfamily.com and click Get Started. Or you can ask a question of your own by emailing podcast@physicianfamily.com. See See marketing disclosures at physicianfamily.com/disclosures.